Close your eyes. Let the outside world fade away. The light dims, sounds drift into the distance, and the gravity of consciousness begins to loosen its grip. You are about to dive into one of the greatest enigmas of human existence: sleep. A phenomenon so common, so routine, that few realize how deeply mysterious it truly is within the biological universe. Everyone sleeps. From humans to birds, from marine mammals to insects, sleep is a constant, a need as universal as food, water, or air. Yet unlike these, which have clear explanations, sleep remains shrouded in mist. Why do we sleep? What exactly happens when we're unconscious? And the most unsettling question of all, if it's so essential to life, why do we still not fully understand what it is? Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of sleep is its apparent uselessness. Think about it. During sleep, you're vulnerable, unaware, unproductive, unable to respond to danger. In survival logic, that should be a major flaw. And yet, through millions of years of evolution, sleep has endured. Worse still, it's become even more essential. A being deprived of sleep for long enough begins to collapse. Not just emotionally, but physically, neurologically, metabolically. Sleep deprivation can be more lethal than hunger. So, how can something so vital still have such a hidden purpose? Modern science has made significant progress. We now know that sleep is tied to memory consolidation, emotional regulation, brain cleansing, and hormonal balance. But none of that truly explains why we need to sleep. These are associated functions, not root causes. Sleep remains a portal of questions, a locked door behind which something still escapes our full understanding. And maybe that's where its true power lies, in the fact that it forces us to let go. To sleep is to surrender. It's to trust that, by closing your eyes, something greater, biological or spiritual, will take care of the rest. But what happens in that time when we disconnect from the world? The mind travels, the body transforms, the brain, curiously, becomes more active than during many moments of wakefulness. Images emerge, voices, sensations without logic, realities that don't exist, emotions that feel intensely real, and when we awaken, it all slips through our fingers like water. Sleep holds secrets that defy even the most powerful scientific equipment. Machines record brain waves, measure breathing, track heartbeats, but they can't access what truly happens within the vastness of the human unconscious. Sleep is the soul's laboratory, and over the next few hours, we will explore every corner of this universe. We will talk about the sleep cycles, their phases and rhythms. We'll explore dreams, their meanings, their theories, their absurdities. We'll dive into sleep paralysis, night disorders, and out-of-body experiences. We'll understand how the brain behaves while you sleep, what it erases, what it stores, what it rebuilds. And in the end, perhaps, we will come closer to a deeper understanding not just of sleep, but of ourselves. Because sleep is not just about resting. Sleep is entering a state where reality bends, where time dissolves, where the body slumbers, but the mind awakens. Imagine the first living beings on Earth. Primitive microorganisms drifting through ancient oceans, without eyes, without dreams, without consciousness, yet some of them already exhibited cyclical patterns of inactivity. A rudimentary kind of rest, a pause in their vital functions. Sleep, it seems, did not originate with humans, nor even with mammals. It predates complexity. It exists in various forms, in fish, reptiles, birds, insects. Even worms display behaviors that resemble sleep. And that leads us to a conclusion as astonishing as it is inevitable. Sleep is a deeply rooted trait in the evolution of life, a phenomenon as ancient as the instinct to survive itself. But if natural selection tends to eliminate everything that is useless, why did sleep persist? Why, instead of evolving to need less sleep or none at all, has sleep remained, or worse, grown more sophisticated. After all, a sleeping animal is vulnerable, an easy target for predators. This seems to contradict the basic principle of Darwinian evolution. The only possible explanation is that the benefits of sleep far outweigh the risks. Sleep, then, is not optional. It is a biological imperative, and there is no single theory to explain its existence. There are many, and although none of them explains everything, they complement one another. One of the oldest and most intuitive is the energy conservation theory. Sleeping would serve as a way to conserve calories during periods of low demand, especially at night, when hunting or activity becomes less efficient. But this theory stumbles over something curious. The brain consumes nearly the same amount of energy while asleep as it does when awake, and during some phases of sleep even more. So another hypothesis emerges: physical repair. During sleep, especially deep sleep, the body carries out regenerative functions. It repairs tissues, strengthens the immune system, and regulates hormones such as GH, the growth hormone. This theory explains sleep well in physical terms. But it doesn't answer the deeper question: what does sleep do to the brain? This is where the memory consolidation theory comes in. Researchers have observed that the brain organizes and stores memories while we sleep. New information is reinforced. Neural connections are reconfigured. Experiments show that students who sleep after studying perform much better than those who remain awake. The mind may sleep, but it continues to work. Silently, it selects, archives, and even erases. And that leads us to one of the most recent findings: sleep as a form of brain cleansing. In 2013, scientists discovered a system called the glymphatic system, a drainage network that removes toxins from the brain, and it functions almost exclusively during sleep. While awake, the brain is too busy. But when we sleep, it activates this system, as if performing a deep cleaning. Among the toxins it eliminates is beta amyloid, a protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. This means sleep doesn't just keep us alert, it may be essential in protecting us from neurodegenerative diseases. And then we encounter an even deeper question: do we dream because of the brain? Or does the brain dream because of something greater? In its most primitive form, sleep may have begun as a simple pattern of inactivity. But over millions of years, it evolved. It adapted to the complexity of consciousness. It became entangled with learning, emotion, and creativity. And today, for us humans, it is a deep dive into a dimension where the real dissolves and the imaginary takes form. In simpler creatures, like insects, sleep seems to be merely a behavioral pause. But in animals like octopuses, which show color and pattern changes during REM sleep, similar to dreaming, we see that something more is happening, even among vastly different species. Dolphins, for example, sleep with only half their brain at a time, keeping one side awake to surface for air. This shows us that sleep adapts, transforms, but never disappears. All of this leads to one conclusion: sleep is an ancient code, inscribed in the very logic of life. A process so essential, so profound, that it has withstood every test of time. It may have begun as a simple cycle, but it has become the foundation of our sanity, our learning, and perhaps even our soul. To sleep, then, is to continue the story of life. When we close our eyes at night, we repeat the gesture of billions of creatures before us. We become part of a biological tradition that spans ages, and perhaps in sleep, we access something far older than memory, perhaps the essence of existence itself. When we close our eyes and cross the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, we don't enter a continuous, uniform state of rest. On the contrary, sleep is a complex dance between distinct stages, each with unique characteristics, alternating in repeating cycles throughout the night. This silent choreography, invisible to our conscious senses, is governed by rhythms that science has only recently begun to understand. And what we've discovered is that, as we sleep, our mind performs a true inner theater, where the stage changes, the actors switch masks, and logic bends with each new act. The sleep cycle is divided into two main phases: NREM sleep, non-rapid eye movement, and REM sleep, rapid eye movement. These phases alternate in cycles of approximately 90 minutes, repeating 4 to 6 times per night in a healthy adult. But within this broad division lies a world of depth and detail that reveals the mysteries of the sleeping mind. NREM sleep is further divided into 3 stages, labeled N1 to N3. Stage N1 is the portal, a liminal state between wakefulness and sleep. In this stage, the eyes begin to close slowly, muscles relax, and the brain starts to produce theta waves, slow and undulating. Many people experience brief visual or auditory hallucinations during this phase. Sensations of falling, strange noises, flashes of meaningless images. It's the point where reality begins to fragment, though a faint thread of consciousness remains. Next, we descend into stage N2, a light yet more stable sleep. Here, the body further reduces its activity. Heart rate slows, breathing becomes deeper, and body temperature drops. The brain begins emitting patterns known as sleep spindles and K-complexes, electrical signals thought to play a role in memory consolidation and the filtering of external stimuli. The outside world fades, and the brain turns inward. The deepest stage of NREM sleep is N3, known as slow-wave sleep or delta sleep. This is where physical restoration occurs in full. The body releases growth hormone, repairs cells, and strengthens the immune system. But beyond the physical, the brain also performs fundamental processes of internal reorganization. In this stage, we disconnect almost entirely from the world, submerged in a quiet darkness where little, if anything, is dreamed. It is the most restorative sleep, and paradoxically, the hardest from which to awaken. But after this deep dive, something curious happens. The cycle resurfaces, and then everything changes. REM sleep begins. The once quiet and economical brain lights up like a city viewed from space. The eyes dart rapidly beneath closed lids. Brain activity resembles that of wakefulness. This is when vivid, intense, and bizarre dreams take place. Meanwhile, the body remains virtually paralyzed, a safety mechanism that prevents us from physically acting out our dreams. This muscle paralysis, known as REM atonia, is key to understanding phenomena like sleepwalking and sleep paralysis, which we'll explore soon. REM sleep plays another crucial role. It is deeply connected to emotional processing. Studies show that people deprived of REM sleep tend to experience emotional instability, learning difficulties, and depressive symptoms. Dreaming, then, may be more than just a cerebral oddity. It might be a form of psychological digestion. And the most fascinating part, as the night progresses, the cycles shift. Deep N3 sleep dominates early in the night, but REM sleep grows longer in the final cycles, especially in the hours just before waking. In other words, it is in the final stretch of the night that we dream the most. This ballet between light sleep, deep sleep, and REM is orchestrated by two main systems: the circadian clock, which governs our 24-hour biological rhythm, and the sleep homeostat, which increases pressure to sleep the longer we stay awake. Together, they determine not only when we sleep, but how we sleep. Any imbalance, whether due to insomnia, stress, excessive screen time, long trips, or irregular shifts, can severely disrupt this delicate sleep architecture. And when it breaks down, the consequences are profound. Fragmented, poorly distributed, or insufficient sleep affects attention, memory, mood, metabolism, the immune system, the heart, and the brain. And ironically, we often believe that sleeping less makes us more productive, stronger, more resilient. But sleep is not a pause. It's an essential gear. And these cycles, repeating night after night, are like the heartbeat of the unconscious, a silent symphony. A biological performance that must unfold for us to live in balance. Each person has a unique sleep architecture, like a fingerprint. Children spend more time in deep sleep. The elderly, less. Some people dream vividly. Others remember almost nothing. But everyone, without exception, passes through the same gates, the same phases, the same cycles, even if they don't realize it. Because sleep, above all, is a journey. And every night, we take that journey without a ticket, but with the hope of returning more whole in the morning. It's easy to imagine sleep as a state of shutdown, a pause, a biological intermission where the body retreats and the mind goes silent. But that vision is an illusion. Because in truth, while you sleep, the most important organ of your existence, the brain, springs into action as if it were the center of a glowing metropolis in the middle of the night. The lights may be off on the outside, but inside, it's an electrical storm. Synapses fire, neural networks reorganize, memories move, fade, and blend. In many ways, the sleeping brain is as active, or even more so, than when we're awake. But its activity is different. No longer outward-facing, but immersed in a deep internal process of maintenance, repair, reconstruction, and perhaps, just perhaps, self-discovery. During sleep, different areas of the brain activate at different times. In deep NREM sleep, for example, the brain is dominated by slow, synchronized brain waves, known as delta waves, a sign that it has entered restoration mode. But even in this unconscious state, areas like the hippocampus remain hard at work, transferring recent memories from short-term storage into more permanent regions of the cerebral cortex. It's like saving important files from a temporary drive onto a secure hard disk. Sleeping well means, among other things, remembering better. Then comes REM sleep, and the symphony changes. Brain activity becomes erratic and vibrant, resembling the patterns seen during wakefulness. But there's something curious. Areas associated with logic and judgment, such as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, remain less active. Meanwhile, emotional structures like the amygdala and head limbic system light up. This explains why dreams are so chaotic, emotional, and disconnected from logic. The brain is in a state of pure creativity, but with its rational filters turned off. It's as if it's rehearsing possibilities, releasing trauma, experimenting with scenarios it would never dare to try while awake. Another crucial function of the sleeping brain is neural cleansing. For decades, it was believed that the brain lacked a lymphatic system like the rest of the body, meaning there was no clear mechanism for removing the metabolic waste generated by intense neural activity. But that view changed with the discovery of the eglymphatic system, a network of channels and spaces between neurons that expands during sleep, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely, washing away potentially toxic substances. Among these is beta amyloid, a protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. That means the brain quite literally washes itself while we sleep, a molecular cleaning that can only happen when we allow ourselves to rest deeply. There is also evidence that the brain performs emotional triage while we sleep. Dreams often reflect fragments of daily experience, rendered in symbolic, surreal forms. And this reenactment may not be random. Theories suggest it helps us process emotions, understand relationships, simulate threats, and rehearse responses. Research shows that people deprived of REM sleep tend to interpret facial expressions more negatively, reacting with increased irritability and anxiety. So sleeping well doesn't just keep us alert, it makes us more emotionally balanced. Another fascinating finding is the reactivation of lived experiences. Functional MRI studies have shown that during sleep, the same neural patterns activated during learning reappear spontaneously, as if the brain were reliving those moments to reinforce them. And this goes beyond facts and figures. If you learned a new physical movement, like playing a melody or performing a dance step, your brain will replay that movement silently during sleep, strengthening the connections involved in the skill. And yet, there are more mysteries. In certain sleep phases, the brain enters oscillatory states that scientists don't yet fully understand. Large-scale synchrony, electrical pulses rippling like waves across regions, events some neuroscientists describe as a master signal of reorganization. These patterns may be linked to creativity, problem-solving, or even profound subjective experiences we associate with insights and epiphanies. It's not uncommon for artists, scientists, and thinkers to say that their most powerful ideas came to them in dreams, or in liminal states between sleep and wakefulness. And so we're left with questions that science still hesitates to answer. Does the brain access layers of the mind hidden during the day? Does the unconscious truly speak during sleep, as Freud or Jung once proposed? Or is the sleeping brain simply a mathematician, solving silent equations we're not yet able to comprehend? What we do know for sure is that sleep is not an absence. It's a subtle presence, a parallel state of brain function. And without it, everything we are, our memory, our identity, our sanity, begins to unravel. As you sleep, your brain continues to write the story of who you are. It corrects errors, reinforces truths, dissolves pain, and sometimes it invents worlds. Have you ever dreamed something so vivid, so intense, that upon waking, you needed a few seconds to realize it wasn't real? A hug you never received, a landscape that doesn't exist, a nameless fear, a joy without reason. Dreams are windows into the unknown. They are experiences that occur within the sleeping mind, but affect the heart as if they were real memories. And throughout history, we have tried everything to understand them: mythology, philosophy, medicine, psychology, neuroscience. Yet dreams remain at their core the domain of the unexplainable. The truth is, we don't exactly know why we dream. There are many hypotheses, but no definitive conclusion. What we do know is that most dreams occur during the REM phase of sleep, when the brain is highly active but the body remains paralyzed. In this phase, areas associated with emotion, like the amygdala, are highly engaged, while regions responsible for logic and judgment are largely inactive. The result? Chaotic narratives, fragmented worlds, absurdities that make perfect sense while we're inside them. Dreaming, in this state, becomes an emotional story told without rational filters. But it wasn't always science that sought to decode dreams. Ancient civilizations believed dreams were messages from the gods. In ancient Egypt, specially trained priests interpreted dreams as prophetic visions. In ancient Greece, dreams were seen as divine visits, warnings, omens. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, suspected a physiological origin, but still treated dreams with reverence. In India, Tibet, and indigenous cultures of the Americas and Africa, dreams have long held a place between the real and the spiritual, as bridges between worlds. Over time, more psychological theories emerged. In 1899, Sigmund Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams, proposing that dreams are disguised expressions of repressed desires. For him, dream content was divided into the manifest, what is seen, and the latent, what it truly means. A train might symbolize a sexual urge. A fall might represent a fear of failure. The language of dreams, according to Freud, is symbolic, sexualized, deeply tied to the unconscious. Carl Jung, Freud's student and later rival, offered a different perspective. Dreams are expressions of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of universal symbols shared by all humanity, like the hero, the shadow, the wise old man. For Jung, dreams weren't noise. They were messages, revelations, keys to the soul. Modern science, however, offers a colder explanation. Many neuroscientists consider dreams as mere byproducts of REM sleep brain activity. As the brain reorganizes information, it triggers images, sounds, and memories that combine randomly. This is the activation synthesis theory proposed by Hobson and Macaulay in the 1970s. According to this view, the brain is simply trying to make sense of a flood of random neural signals, like a screenwriter stitching together a film from disconnected scenes. There would be no deeper meaning, just chaos seeking coherence. But this theory doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why we dream of future events, even symbolically, nor why some people solve real-life problems in dreams, or why certain dreams convey emotions and messages so powerful they change our state of mind upon waking. Recent studies suggest that dreams assist in emotional memory consolidation, creative problem-solving, and psychological adaptation to trauma. In other words, even if the content seems chaotic, the function may be incredibly precise. And then there are lucid dreams, those rare moments when the dreamer becomes aware they're dreaming. In this state, the dreamer can, in some cases, control what happens. Fly, visit distant places, speak with dream figures. It's like being awake inside a world constructed by your own mind. Techniques exist to induce lucid dreaming, from dream journals to self-suggestion methods during REM sleep. And though it feels like magic, brain imaging studies confirm that parts of the brain responsible for self-awareness become active during lucid dreams. There is science, but also a boundary where science meets mystery. And so the question arises, is dreaming just a biological function, or is it a form of parallel existence? When we dream of someone who has passed and feel their hug, their voice, their presence with almost tangible reality, is that memory or reunion? When we revisit unknown landscapes that feel deeply familiar, is that fantasy or remembrance of something we cannot explain? There are reports of shared
Accounts
dreams.
of dreams revealing truths that later come to pass. Dreams that altered the course of entire lives. Whatever the origin of dreams, random brain fire, repressed desire, memory cleansing, or access to other realities, one thing is certain: they hold power. A dream can soothe or terrify, heal or wound, inspire or destroy. It is a testing ground for the human psyche, an arena where we confront fears, relive guilt, celebrate victories, or attempt somehow to rebuild ourselves. To sleep, then, is not merely to rest. It is to open a space for the invisible to speak. And dreams, in this untranslatable language, may be the deepest whisper of what we call the soul. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, your eyes open. The darkness in the room is still and silent. You try to move, but you can't. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. Your body is paralyzed, as if it no longer belongs to you. And then, something even stranger happens. You feel a presence in the room, next to you, sometimes on top of you. Something that cannot be seen with the eyes, but is perceived with terrifying clarity. A shadowy figure, a weight on your chest, a whisper in your ear, a breath that isn't yours. This is the typical scenario of a sleep paralysis episode, one of the most disturbing and yet most studied and feared phenomena in sleep neuroscience. Sleep paralysis occurs when a person partially awakens during the REM phase, before the brain has fully deactivated muscle atonia, the natural temporary paralysis that keeps the body still during dreams. In other words, the mind wakes up, but the body remains asleep. You are conscious, but completely unable to move. And worse, in many cases, this awareness is accompanied by hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations, images, sounds, and sensations that emerge at the boundary between dreaming and waking. The result is an experience that feels terrifyingly real and absolutely paralyzing. This phenomenon has been reported for centuries across different cultures under different names. In Scandinavia, it was called the Altmare, a nocturnal demon said to sit on the chest of its victims, preventing them from breathing. In Japan, it's known as Kanashibari, often linked to binding spirits.
In Brazil, many know it as the eye pisadeira, a hideous old woman who appears at night and sits on the chest of the sleeping. In the United States, some refer to it as the eye old hag syndrome. Regardless of the name, the story is almost always the same. An oppressive presence, a sense of threat, absolute helplessness in the face of something that defies logic. But what does science say about all this? Studies show that sleep paralysis is relatively common. It's estimated that 25% to 40% of people will experience at least one episode in their lifetime. Among individuals with sleep disorders or high stress, that number may be even higher. Neuroscience explains that the event results from a temporary dissociation between the systems that regulate REM sleep. The brain reactivates consciousness, but muscle paralysis remains. What follows are emotional interpretations, often shaped by fear, stress, cultural background, and mental state. During paralysis, the brain can produce visual, tactile, and auditory hallucinations that feel absolutely real because they occur in a liminal state between dreaming and wakefulness. The body is frozen, the mind is alert, and the emotional system is in full emergency mode. It's a perfect storm for the brain to project its deepest fears. Hence the shadowy figures, the unexplainable sounds, the sensation of pressure on the chest. The phenomenon is internal, but its intensity is so great that people swear they've experienced something external, supernatural, even malevolent. Yet not all episodes are negative. There are accounts of people who, over time, learn to recognize sleep paralysis and even use it as a portal into lucid dreaming. They realize they are in the state, remain calm, and in some cases, deliberately transition into a controlled dream. But that requires practice, self-awareness, and the ability to stay calm, a tall order when facing the unknown. Some people also view sleep paralysis as more than just a neurological event. Many associate it with spiritual episodes, out-of-body experiences, or even contact with other realities. In various esoteric traditions, paralysis is seen as the entry point into astral projection, a state where consciousness detaches from the physical body to explore other dimensions. People report floating, seeing themselves from above, or visiting places they've never seen. Science remains skeptical of such interpretations. But what cannot be denied is that the experience is profound, unforgettable, and often transformative. The most important thing for those who experience sleep paralysis is to understand that they are not alone, and that despite the terror it brings, the phenomenon is harmless and temporary. Knowing this helps reduce fear, which in turn can lower the chance of recurrence. Practices like improving sleep hygiene, avoiding sleeping on your back, reducing stress, and maintaining regular sleep schedules can help. And for those who want to explore this state, there are studies, guides, and techniques that can turn fear into curiosity, and perhaps even into growth. Sleep paralysis reminds us of something essential. Sleep is not just rest. It is a threshold, a frontier where the boundaries between body and mind blur, where the real and the imaginary meet. And when that line is crossed before its time, the result may be the most terrifying or the most enlightening experience of your life. Imagine walking through your house in the middle of the night, opening doors, moving objects, speaking incoherent phrases, sometimes even driving, eating, or stepping outside, all while technically asleep. Sleepwalking is one of the strangest phenomena of sleep, a condition in which the body performs complex actions while the mind remains submerged in the deepest stages of unconsciousness, as if parts of the brain are awake while others are still fast asleep. And the natural question that arises is, how is this even possible? Sleepwalking occurs primarily during slow-wave sleep, also known as stage N3 of non-REM sleep, the phase in which rest is deepest and most restorative. Normally, the body should be in full repose, but in some individuals, especially children,
parts of the brain responsible for movement and coordination become spontaneously activated, allowing physical actions while consciousness remains absent. The person might get up, walk around, speak, open drawers, or perform simple tasks, all with eyes open, but with a vacant, unfocused gaze. Upon waking, they usually remember nothing. This disorder is more common in childhood, affecting about 15% of children at some point. In most cases, it fades with age. But in adults, it can persist and become more dangerous as the behaviors tend to grow more complex and, in some cases, potentially hazardous. Documented cases exist of people who have cooked meals, driven vehicles, and even committed violent acts while sleepwalking. In extremely rare instances, there are reports of sleepwalking homicide, which has been used in legal defenses with varying degrees of success. The question that neuroscience continues to debate is, how absent is consciousness, really? And where does automatism end and responsibility begin? Another phenomenon just as puzzling is night terrors. Unlike nightmares, which occur during REM sleep and are usually remembered, night terrors happen during deep non-REM sleep, and because of this, the person does not recall them. They appear abruptly. The person screams, cries, thrashes about, experiences rapid heartbeat, profuse sweating, and wide eyes, all without truly waking up. To an observer, it resembles a panic attack, while the person experiencing it remains mentally disconnected. Trying to wake them can be difficult, and sometimes dangerous. Upon awakening, they usually have no idea what happened. It looks like a nightmare, but it's not. It's something even more primal. A scream from the depths of the unconscious brain. Science still doesn't know exactly what causes night terrors. It's believed to be linked to the maturation of the central nervous system, which is why it's more common in children. But it can also appear in adults facing high levels of stress, anxiety, or neurological disorders. What intrigues researchers is that these episodes occur without involving brain areas related to imagery or memory. In other words, they are purely physiological, like emotional electrical discharges, emerging from a brain undergoing internal reorganization. Beyond these two phenomena lies a broader category known as parasomnias, abnormal behaviors that occur during sleep. These include episodes of unconscious night eating, sleep talking, automatic sexual behaviors, sexsomnia, involuntary laughter or crying, and even physical aggression toward bed partners. In rare cases, individuals may experience nocturnal automatism, where they perform complex actions like unlocking doors, leaving the house, or handling dangerous objects, with no memory of it upon waking. It's as if the brain becomes vulnerable at night to control failures, a sort of neural short circuit between sleep, movement, and consciousness. Sleep medicine has been trying to understand these behaviors for decades, and while treatments exist, from lifestyle changes to medications and behavioral therapies, many of these disorders remain without a clear explanation. They challenge traditional models of how the brain is expected to behave during sleep. After all, sleep is supposed to be a state of shutdown. But these manifestations reveal that not everything turns off. Sometimes, the most instinctive and primitive parts of us stay active, operating in the dark, perhaps trying to resolve what the conscious mind cannot yet grasp. And there is a more uncomfortable question. What do these behaviors reveal about us? If we perform actions while asleep that we would never do awake, are those actions hidden within us? Are they part of our shadow, as Jung might say? Or are they simply random static from an imperfect biological system? What is certain is that sleep, far from being a simple pause, is a kind of arena where body and mind negotiate, clash, and sometimes enter into conflict. And from these conflicts arise episodes that remind us that not even rest is safe from the complexity of being human. Sleep is necessary, but it is never simple. Have you ever felt like you slept for hours,
only to check the clock and see that just a few minutes had passed? Or the opposite, waking up with the impression that you had only closed your eyes for a second, only to realize the entire night was gone? The way we perceive time while sleeping is perhaps one of the most fascinating distortions of human consciousness. And the deeper we dive into this subject, the more elusive it becomes. Because time, during sleep, is not the same time as waking life. It stretches, compresses, fragments. Sometimes it feels infinite, other times just a blink. But what does this mean? Why do we dream full sequences of events that seem to last hours, in a matter of seconds? What does sleep reveal about the true nature of time? Neuroscience still struggles to explain this subjective experience. After all, objective time, the one measured by clocks and timers, continues its linear, unrelenting path. But the time of the mind, the time of consciousness, is something else entirely. It depends on internal processes, on attention, memory, and the sequence of perceived events. During sleep, these elements are profoundly altered. The brain operates on different frequencies. Areas responsible for time perception, such as the prefrontal cortex, are less active, while emotional and sensory regions take the lead. The result is a rupture between inner and outer time. And when this rupture occurs, the experience lived inside a dream can feel as long or as brief as the brain allows. One of the most revealing experiments on this involved people trained in lucid dreaming. These individuals were instructed to perform timed tasks within their dreams, like counting from 1 to 10, or moving their eyes at regular intervals. What researchers found was surprising. Even though dream time felt subjectively distorted, the intervals measured through eye movements during REM sleep were relatively close to real time. This suggests that the brain maintains a kind of functional internal clock, even in altered states of consciousness. However, the subjective interpretation of that time can vary dramatically. And that's what fascinates us. In a dream, it's common to experience complex scenes, full narratives with beginnings, middles, and ends. You may relive your childhood, travel through cities, engage in long conversations, or live through stories that seem to last hours. And all of it takes place within a few seconds of brain activity. This is because the brain recreates experiences using emotional and symbolic memory, not based on the linear chronology of waking life. The dream doesn't need to happen in time the way reality does. It exists outside the timeline. It happens all at once, like a flash, but the mind interprets it as a sequence. This distorted perception of time also explains why some people wake up feeling exhausted even after sleeping for many hours, especially when the dreams are intense, restless, emotionally charged. For the body, rest occurred, but for the mind, time may have been twisted. The opposite is also true. Some report sleeping for just a few minutes and waking up deeply restored, as if they had spent hours in calm. This shows that the quality of the subjective time experience can be more important than its objective quantity. From a philosophical perspective, this opens a doorway to profound questions. Is time a construction of consciousness? If during sleep it can be distorted, ignored, or even nullified, then is it truly real? Or just an illusion we use to organize reality? For Hanti, Tibetan Buddhists, for example, the states of sleep and dreaming are portals for understanding the impermanence of reality and of time itself. In certain branches of modern physics, such as the yacht theory of relativity, time is also relative to the observer. And further still, some quantum theories are beginning to question whether time even exists in the way we conceive it. During sleep, you might dream that you lived through decades, only to wake up and find that just minutes have passed. And even though it's an internal, subjective phenomenon, it forces us to confront an unsettling idea. The time we live might not be the time the world lives. Our experience of existence doesn't follow the ticking of the clock. It follows the rhythm of the mind,
and the mind, during sleep, creates its own temporal universe. Perhaps in our dreams, we are masters of a time that cannot be measured, a time that escapes the grip of logic and chronology, a time that allows us to relive the past, anticipate the future, or exist in all directions at once. A time where the present can last forever, or vanish in an instant. To sleep, then, is not merely to close your eyes. It is to enter a world where time ceases to be a line and becomes a spiral, a fragment, a memory, a sensation. And in that world, we are not just spectators. We are the creators of our own eternity. Science, driven by its insatiable thirst to understand what makes us human, has always looked at sleep with a mix of curiosity and frustration. How can we study something that unfolds entirely within the mind, a state in which the very subject can barely describe what is being experienced? And yet, over the past century, researchers have approached sleep with rigor, patience, and, often, radical creativity. The result is a series of experiments that not only shaped what we now know about sleep, but also challenged the boundaries of neuroscience, psychology, and even ethics. One of the most important milestones occurred in the 1950s when scientists Eugene Aserinsky and Nathaniel Kleitman at the University of Chicago discovered the REM phase of sleep. They observed that during certain periods of the night, the eyes of sleeping individuals moved rapidly beneath their eyelids, and waking them during those moments led to vivid reports of dreaming. It was the first time sleep was no longer seen as a uniform block of unconsciousness. Instead, it revealed a layered architecture. This discovery didn't just mark the birth of modern sleep science. It also proved that dreams have both a place and a time in the brain. Another legendary experiment involved Randy Gardner, an American student who, in 1964, set the record for the longest documented period without sleep. 264 hours, or about 11 consecutive days. Under close supervision, Gardner was monitored as sleep was consistently withheld. As time passed, he began experiencing hallucinations, memory lapses, motor dysfunctions, extreme irritability, and delusions. When the experiment ended, just a few hours of deep sleep were enough to begin restoring his cognitive functions. The message was clear. Sleep is a biological necessity, not a luxury. Other studies employed tools like electroencephalograms, EEGs, which measure the brain's electrical activity. Through these methods, researchers discovered the alternation between NREM and REM phases, the presence of slow-wave brain activity, sleep spindles, and K-complexes, patterns of neural firing that occur specifically during light and deep sleep. These electrical signals became the invisible language through which scientists translate sleep. And the more they observed those waves, the more it became clear that sleep is a synchronized dance, a silent orchestra of electricity and neurochemistry. One of the most intriguing studies involved selective deprivation of REM sleep. Participants were allowed to sleep, but were woken each time they entered REM. The results were undeniable. Even with many hours of sleep without REM, the subjects experienced severe memory deficits, emotional instability, learning difficulties, and psychological stress. It proved that sleep alone isn't enough. We need to dream. REM sleep has functions that go far beyond rest. It's tied to emotional integration, creativity, and mental health. Its absence is devastating. More recently, experiments in environments totally isolated from light, sound, and time, such as caves or underground bunkers, revealed that humans possess a biological internal clock. Even without external cues, this clock regulates sleep and wake cycles around a 24-hour rhythm, plus a few minutes. This cycle, known as the circadian rhythm, is governed by a tiny structure in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, located in the hypothalamus. This master clock not only controls sleep, but also body temperature, hormone production, metabolism, and even mood. In other words, sleep is part of a much larger biological mechanism. On another frontier, transcranial stimulation techniques have begun to explore the possibility of inducing paralyzed dreams or enhancing memory consolidation during sleep. Gentle electrical stimulation was applied to specific regions of the brain during REM sleep, with promising results. Some participants became aware that they were dreaming, while others performed better in memory tests after waking. This suggests that we may be able to manipulate the sleeping brain without waking it up. Modern neuroscience is also closely studying the so-called glymphatic system, responsible for clearing metabolic waste from the brain during deep sleep. Studies in mice revealed that during sleep, the space between neurons expands, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to circulate and wash away toxins such as beta amyloid, a protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. This discovery has revolutionized our understanding of sleep as a biological maintenance process. It doesn't just recharge the body, it protects the brain from degeneration. But perhaps the most intriguing experiments are still ahead of us. Researchers are already testing the use of artificial intelligence to decode dreams. Using algorithms that analyze brain patterns in real time, scientists are beginning to predict, based on large data sets, the themes or objects a person is dreaming about, even if they don't describe them. This brings us dangerously close to the idea of mind reading. Could we one day watch our dreams on a screen? Could we rewrite them, edit them, manipulate them? Sleep science is advancing, but each new discovery only opens more profound questions. Because sleep, despite all the machines, measurements, and algorithms, remains an internal, subjective, and deeply human experience. We can study it, we can map its waves, dissect its stages, and measure its effects. But what it means may never be captured in charts or numbers. To sleep is to live another version of reality. And as brilliant as these experiments may be, they still stand at the edge of what truly happens when we close our eyes and fall into ourselves. For centuries, sleep was seen as an inviolable sanctuary, a silent, intimate moment in which the body withdraws and the mind dives into secret landscapes. But science moves forward. Technology evolves. And now, for the first time in history, we are on the verge of entering sleep not as mere observers, but as architects. A new era is emerging, where it may become possible to manipulate the sleeping brain, induce dreams, stimulate memories, and, perhaps, control the unconscious. The sleep of the future may no longer be something that simply happens. It may become something we program. Researchers at institutions such as MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and several European universities are developing devices capable of interacting with the brain during sleep. One fascinating example is Dormio, an experimental system created at the MIT Media Lab. It monitors the physiological signals of someone drifting off, like heart rate and electrical activity, and at a specific moment between wakefulness and sleep, the hypnagogic stage, it delivers carefully crafted audio messages. The goal? To induce specific dream themes, and it worked. Participants reported dreaming of tigers, trees, music, mathematics, all in line with the prompts they received. This means we are already capable of planting seeds in dreams. But it doesn't stop there. Neurotechnology is working on ways to enhance deep sleep, extend REM phases, or even partially replace sleep with neural stimulation. Wearable devices, such as headbands or earbuds, are being tested to emit sound synchronized with brainwaves, reinforcing the brain's natural sleep cycles. In some studies, people exposed to this technology showed improvements in memory retention, mood, and creativity upon waking. It's as if sleep is being optimized, nature receiving an upgrade through engineering. Another promising and controversial field is the attempt to decode dreams using artificial intelligence. Through deep learning algorithms and functional MRI scans,
Japanese and American scientists are mapping the brain regions activated during REM sleep and attempting to correlate those patterns with specific content. In early experiments, they managed to identify, with reasonable accuracy, images being dreamed, such as faces, objects, or settings. The progress of this technology suggests that one day we may be able to watch our dreams, or even store them as mental videos. However, this new frontier raises complex ethical questions. If we can access and modify dreams, who will control that access? Tech companies are already speculating about devices that could use sleep as a space for subliminal advertising, branded experiences, or message reinforcement. The idea of dream marketing is no longer fiction. It has already been proposed in real campaigns. This opens up a sensitive debate. Will the dream, once a sacred space of the psyche, become yet another terrain for commercial exploitation? Even further, futuristic hypotheses emerge. Memory uploads during sleep, shared dreams between individuals, motor skill training in dream states, sleep compression to achieve more in fewer hours, or even induced hibernation for deep space travel. Technologies inspired by science fiction, like those in Inception or The Matrix, begin to feel less distant when compared with what is already being tested in laboratories. But there is a subtle and profound risk in this path. In trying to master sleep, we may lose what is most essential about it, its mystery. The beauty of sleep may lie in its unpredictability. To dream is to discover what the unconscious wants to reveal, not what we want it to say. Altering this, even with good intentions, might distance us from something fundamental, contact with what we do not control, and perhaps in that nightly surrender, there is a wisdom science has yet to measure. So the question is not only, can we manipulate sleep, but should we? How far can we go in optimizing a process that connects us to such deep layers of existence? Is dreaming on command still dreaming? Will sleeping with technology still be sleeping? Or just another space in the mind colonized by algorithms? The future of sleep will be brilliant, unsettling, promising, and unpredictable. But regardless of technological progress, one truth will remain unchanged. Sleep is a bridge between body and mind, between the outside world and the inner universe. And even if one day we can control everything, perhaps we will still need every now and then to simply close our eyes and let sleep take us wherever it wants. There is a moment every night when the world fades away. The body slows down, the breath becomes steady, the muscles release. And then, without resistance, we fall. A soft, almost imperceptible fall that takes us to a place with no time, no gravity, no shape. This place is sleep. And no matter how deeply science studies it, no matter how many machines monitor it, no matter how hard we try to decode it, it remains, above all, a fundamental mystery of existence. To sleep is to die for a few hours. It is to allow ourselves to disappear, to surrender to the unknown, to give up control. No one knows for sure what they will find when they close their eyes. It could be a dream. It could be emptiness. It could be the memory of something forgotten, or a revelation of something not yet lived. And even so, night after night we accept this plunge. We surrender to the night, as if sleep were a silent pact with the invisible. Perhaps sleep exists to preserve our sanity. Perhaps it is a biological archive where we store versions of ourselves that don't fit into the day. Or perhaps it is an ancient ritual, inherited from creatures that vanished millions of years ago. The truth is, sleep reconnects us with something the waking world steals from us: depth, introspection, silence, intimacy with what pulses inside and cannot be seen. To dream, then, is more than a side effect. It is a language, a tongue we do not speak when awake, a kind of emotional wisdom that cannot be put into words but shapes our choices, our feelings, our memories. Because there are dreams that heal, dreams that warn, dreams that repeat, insist, cry on our behalf. And when we awaken, Sometimes we don't know if we returned from a real place or if we were created by it. Sleep also makes us equal. Poor or rich, skeptical or spiritual, everyone sleeps. Everyone enters for at least a few hours a state of absolute vulnerability, where titles vanish, roles dissolve, and only the being remains, naked, unconscious, surrendered to biology and spirit. It is during sleep that the body repairs itself, but perhaps it is also where the soul takes its breath. And what if all of this is more than physiology? What if sleep is a window, a fold in reality where we glimpse without knowing the backstage of existence? Maybe it is there we hear the voice the noise of the world drowns out. Maybe it is there our dead still whisper. Maybe it is there the answers lie, waiting for us to be quiet enough to hear them. As humanity marches forward toward artificial intelligence, neuroengineering, and genetic manipulation, may we never forget sleep as a refuge. A sacred space, uncontrollable, essential, because it is in sleep that we rediscover who we are, free from logic, from expectation, from fear. In sleep, we are memory, we are desire, we are pulse. We are part of what cannot be explained, but can be felt. So tonight, when you lie down, breathe deeply. Turn off the world, close your eyes, and let sleep come, just as it always does, silent, mysterious, vast. Because in that surrender, there is more than rest. There is reunion, there is truth, and there is life. Good night.